I have a unique and special relationship with God. I'm not a prophet, nor am I a sage, or even a great tzaddik. I like to think that I'm not a lunatic, and yet I can still say that I have a very unique and special relationship with God. We all do. There is a relationship between Hashem and the Jewish people, and this is a relationship that God tells us about in this week's Parsha. God says, I took you out of Egypt for a reason, for a purpose. I had something in mind. And in our Parsha, Parshat Shmini, he tells us what that is. V'yitem Kedushim. I want that you should be Kedushim. Comes from the root word Kedushah or Kadosh. Ki Kadosh Ani. For I too am Kadosh. What exactly does it mean to be Kadosh? What exactly is Kedushah? You will find many interpretations and multiple meanings for this term. However, for the sake of our discussion today, we're going to limit it. We're going to limit it and define it by being godlike. Somebody who is Kadosh is someone who is like God. God grants us a soul, thus enabling us and giving us the potential and the power to be like God. And our mission is to retain that holiness, to retain that Kedushah. In every area of Jewish life, there's a two-pronged approach to attaining success and in a way in which we can measure this Kedushah and being godlike. There is Sur Meira Va'asei Tov. There is avoiding that which is wrong and bad, and then there is doing that which is wonderful and good. In this week's Parsha, there's a discussion about eating well, avoiding things like shrutzim, disgusting, creepy, crawly, things that really essentially we would consider pretty gross. Not to eat them. And God says that when you eat the right foods, you're doing the right thing. When we eat well, we ennoble our souls, and we're enabling ourselves, we open ourselves up to Kedushah, to holiness. Eating the wrong things does the opposite. This relationship that we have with Hashem is dynamic. It isn't static. It's in flux, and it's always changing all the time. This too is evident from our discussion about eating foods, about eating well in our Parsha. God says, I brought you up. Ki Kadosh Ani Hashem. Ani Hashem hama'aleh etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim. I am Hashem who took you up out of Egypt. Now God tells us this all the time in the Torah. I'm Hashem who took you out of Egypt. Hotzeiti etchem. I've taken you out. Here though he says, Ani Hashem hama'aleh etchem, who has uplifted you, lifted you up out of Egypt. Two comments. Number one is the one really which we just said, which is why does it say I've uplifted you as opposed to I've taken you out? And number two is ma'aleh etchem is a present tense. It's not something that happened in the past, but it's something that's ongoing. Rashi explains that there is a malyuta, there is some sort of advantage, wonderful thing about being Jewish, and that is that God lifts us up. How does he do this? By giving us Torah and mitzvot. In what way does Hashem bring us up? And what exactly are the mechanics? The answer is, explains the Sforno in this week's Parsha, based on a Gemara in Yuma, the Talmud, that when a person is mekadesh himself a little bit, God comes along and uplifts him to a much higher place. The way in which we relate to God is by doing Torah and mitzvot. When we do Torah and mitzvot, we are uplifting ourselves a little bit. God helps us along, uplifts us even higher. This is, in a nutshell, how we relate to God. Ki kadosh ani. Just as God is kadosh, we can enable ourselves, and we ennoble ourselves to being kadosh as well. May we all merit having a wonderful relationship with God, where we lead a life of Kedushah.